This is Sports and Torts with David Spada and Elliott Harris on TalkZone.com.
Elliott, I'm glad Catherine came in. She was fabulous, and she showed Des Clark how to get here.
Multi-purpose.
She wasn't hard to recognize.
Really?
I was kind of lost, and I seen her come out of the hallways, and I was like, you have to be just coming from the show, because I heard that they are interviewing a model. She was like, well, I'm not a model. Well, did you just come from the show? She said, yes. So I was like, you are a model, because that's,
Okay.
that's what they told me.
One of Elliott's girls.
One of the lovables, we can't just have star quality athletes on here and expect people to tune in. Have to have a little female attractiveness.
Yeah, since the Bears have no cheerleaders anymore.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not providing attractiveness here.
Well, to some people you might be. I'm not going to, not to me personally, but then again, different strokes for different folks.
I hear you.
So, Des, what's going on now? What are you doing?
Man, I have a lot going on right now. That's what I was sitting at home doing today, just putting together some things for 88 Ways. We have a flag football tournament actually coming up Sunday, and then we've been doing a lot of things. We had a corn maze event just this past week. So it's been mostly all 88 Ways and trying to get some things going with a talk radio show also. I'm trying to rebrand myself in that category also.
Because you had the show for about a year or two on another station?
Yeah, it was an online radio show, and it was called Sportsmanlike Conduct, but this time I'm rebranded as just the Des Clark Show. So I'm working on that and trying to get 88 Ways ready to go for January when we get into the two schools that we're going into.
Okay, so who would be on the Des Clark Show, do you think?
Any and everybody. I'm sure you guys will come by and make a guest appearance for me, especially if I need a co-host.
Gladly.
One of you two guys come in and jump in for me.
Because you did the show before with your brother, right?
I did it with my brother and my stepfather, and that was fun to do because it was just like sitting at home and talking about sports like we do all the time. So it was very natural to do it with those two guys. But this time, I'm trying to take it bigger and better, and so I'm going to have to drop those two guys off and thank them for getting me to where I got, and then making them listeners again.
I know a good studio that has video cameras and audio.
Well, I'm looking for a home. I'll be looking for a home once I get everything ready to go. So I'm sure I'll be back in contact.
David's trying to get a commission here from TalkZone somehow.
From Chris Wooding, right. I mean, your other show was great, but I mean, the quality here is studio quality. It's absolutely incredible. Now we got video cameras.
Streaming live here?
Yeah.
Streaming live.
Podcast, all the comforts of home.
Oh, yeah. I like it.
And it's easy to get to for you. You're living in Chicago still, right?
I live in Vernon Hills, so it's a 30-minute drive to get here, so it wasn't bad.
Not bad at all. So most of us dream of being athletes. Do athletes dream of going into broadcasting?
Some do. Some hate it. Some hate what I guess I got to say what we do because, we have a job to do and we have to give an opinion, and they don't like those opinions, so they grow a dislike for the things that we do in the booth. But, some guys like me that like to talk about the sports and have an opinion and want people to hear it, I guess it's a thing that could be very rewarding. And, I mean, when you think about a career after being an athlete, I mean, this is one of the natural things to transition into if you're a good speaker and, like I say, have some thoughts and have some opinions. Yeah.
Now you see some athletes who look like they're still playing, but they're already in that post-playing mode, trying to get themselves positioned to get into that broadcasting world.
Oh yeah, that's why you see me on the Sports Talks stations and forging those good relationships with people in the media, so I would be able to transition and have some type of experience under my belt working with the radio stations in the past. And even now I'm working with ESPN 1000 doing the post-game shows for those guys after the Bears games.
How did the Bears take you? You did some stuff with the score last year. Were they happy that you were making comments about the team on the air, or did they want you to kind of shut up?
Well, when you're a player, you have to kind of walk a tightrope, and you want to give a good, honest opinion, but then again, you have to be respectful to the people that's cutting your check. And it wasn't hard to do because most of the times the people that's asking you the questions, they understand that. And I'm good at answering the question without actually saying anything. So I developed that art over the time. And it's not a hard thing to do. Just giving your honest. The best thing you could do as a player is just talk about yourself. And if you talk about yourself, then you're okay. And everything else with the team, you paint it in a positive way, and you'll be okay. If you're gonna say anything negative to anybody about anything, it has to be about yourself.
Now, how does an athlete know when his career is over? Is it when his body says so, or when his mind says so, or is it when the general manager says so?
Well, in my case, it was when the general manager said so. But right now, I'm not saying that my career is over because my body is still telling me I could play. I feel good to be 34 and to be as healthy as I am and wake up every morning feeling like I feel. I used to joke with the guys all the time last year and in training camp this year, the young guys. It's like, they're 26, 27 years old, and I guarantee you I felt better than most of them. And I told them when they hit 32, 33, they are going to wish and pray that they feel like me. So I feel good. As long as I keep feeling good, I keep pushing to try to get back on the field. But to answer your question, for me, it was when the general manager said, we love you, but you can't play for us anymore.
So if somebody came to you and said, hey, it's week 10 of the season or 11 or whatever it is, you're up for it?
I'm up for it.
You were a quarterback in high school. Maybe your former coach at Wake Forest could use you in Indy. Caldwell.
You know what? Not at quarterback. I can tell you that much. Yeah, those days are long and gone. I'm done with those days. But if anybody comes right now and says, look, we want you on the team, I for me personally, I don't want to go out regretting anything, and I don't want to go out saying, okay, I left out maybe a year or two too early. Like you said, for me, I want my body to tell me that I'm done instead of somebody else saying, you're done. And for the Bears, it wasn't necessarily athletically you're done. It was just that you're done with us for, these other reasons that not necessarily has to do with all the on-field issues, which I think a lot of people don't understand that part of it because that's when the business part comes in.
It's like you're costing us X amount of dollars, and we can replace you with a guy for a third of the price and things like that.
Exactly. And then, wanting to get new, fresh blood in there to start developing new talent. They know what I could do and they know what I could bring to the table. And maybe they felt like it was time to go a different direction to, they have to look towards the future. And my future was very limited and very short. So I think they opted to go with the younger guys.
Well, especially in this Mike Martz offense with Jay Cutler at quarterback, if you were a tight end and you weren't Greg Olsen, it seemed like you didn't see the ball.
Well, I think it's this offense in general because if you look at the tight ends this year, they're not seeing the ball a lot. I think Greg Olsen had a unique type skill set where if you didn't use him as a receiver, I think he was kind of stupid not to do so. But you see where it got him. It got him into Carolina.
I was going to say, got him all the way down to the Panthers where he's having a pretty good season.
Yes,
I don't get what they're doing. Because last year, Martz was trying to pass the ball 75% of the time. You guys had no success. They went 50-50 run pass. You guys start winning. Again, this year, he tried to do the same stuff. Mm-hmm. They lost 2 in a row, and now it's 50-50 again. Do you think Martz has control of what the offense is doing, or is Lovey stepping in and saying, no, you're going to run the ball more?
Mike Martz is the offensive coordinator. He's the guy that's pulling all the strings on that offense. Lovey, I was there 7 years with Lovey, and Lovey always let his offensive coordinator, run the offense. And I think when it comes a point where he sees something not going particularly well and the offensive coordinator may not be paying attention to it as closely as he would like, he's going to step in. And I think that's what happened last year after – the first 7 games, we were throwing the ball 65% of the time, and it was a effort made to go in and say, okay, now we got to run the ball. And I can't say for sure that comes from Lovey, but if I had to put my money on it, I'm going to say it came from Lovey. Because his mantra is we get off the bus running. Yeah. And I think he probably went in and said, look, coach, we get off the bus running. It's time for us to get off the bus running.
Are the Bears going to get Matt Forte killed with him handling the ball? He's either running the ball or being a pass receiver, and he's accounting for an inordinate amount of that offensive yardage. I mean, at some point he's going to get whomped.
Well, the thing about Matt Forte is that he's built to do exactly what he's doing. He's a guy that's, he could play receiver if he wanted to, but he has the skills to play running back. And when you look at guys in this offense in the past, the greatest to ever do it was Marshall Faulk. And he touched the ball a lot, running the ball and receiving. So, if you look at that, Matt Forte is right where he's supposed to be, getting the ball on just about a third of every plays or more and account for over half of the offense. So I think it just speaks well for Matt Forte and what type of player he is, that he could carry that much of the load and come in and do it game in and game out. And it seems like he never loses a step and never backs down from that challenge.
Yeah. Surprised that he didn't take the Bears contract offer?
No, I'm not. But I'm not surprised that the Bears are not stepping up and giving him, $20, $30 million guaranteed money, because when you look at it from Matt Forte's side, over his first 3 years from yards from scrimmage, I think he was third in the league out of all running backs.
What did they offer him? 12, 13 million guaranteed?
I have no clue. I don't know. That's been rumored that he's been
that's the story going around.
But the thing is, they could franchise him, pay him, $8 million next year, franchise the following year, then he'll be 28 years old, and that's the end of a running back usually.
Well, usually, but he may be betting on himself that, he's going to be able to, play a good 10, 11 years at a high level in this league. And what athlete don't think that about themselves? But from his standpoint, he wants to get paid with the top leagues in the back because that's how he produced. From the Bears standpoint, they want to get him as cheap as possible, which, most organizations, they want to get a deal that's going to be favorable to the organization before the player.
And I'm sure the Bears say to themselves, hey, if we don't have Matt Forte at running back, we'll plug somebody else in. This becomes sort of interchangeable parts.
No, see, I think if that's the thinking of the Chicago Bears, then they're thinking the wrong way. I don't think Matt Forte gets the credit that he deserves for being the great, not just a good running back, but the great running back that he is. 2 years ago, he went out and played on a bad knee, didn't complain. He just went and pushed right through everything and almost rushed for 1,000 yards. 2 out of 3 years, he had over 1,000 yards. And this year, I mean, if he's not one of the top 5 backs in the leagues in the league, then I don't know what whoever wouldn't put him in the top 5. I don't know what they evaluating a running back on.
Yeah. Plus, he's running behind that line for the last 3 years, and there's not much there.
Well, yeah, and that's even something that goes to show how great he is, because our offensive line, they've been good and they've had their sports, but I don't think anybody will say this has been one of the better offensive lines in the league. So with a running back putting up those type of numbers between offense behind the offensive line that's not considered one of the best in the league, and he's putting up some of the best numbers in the league year in and year out, you have to tip your hat to him.
Yeah, but the Bears are not going to pay Matt Forte for past performance. They're going to pay him for what they project him to be able to do in the future. Well, and it's like the tread on those tires is getting worn a little thin at some point.
Okay, so you pay him for present performance.
Okay.
They paid or whatever last year, that guy, for what?
Well, and that's the kind of things that you look at. They brought Chester Taylor in. They paid him, more money than anybody else was willing to pay him. They brought Manu Maluyuna in after, having 3 pretty decent tight ends here, 3 starting tight ends, when you talk about me, Greg Olsen, and now Kellen Davis, who's a starting tight end.
But he was a Martz guy, right?
Well, but still, you can't tell me that Matt Forte is not a Martz guy. He's the whole Martz offense right now. So he's definitely a Martz guy. So, you pay guys like that come in from different teams. Why not pay your own guy that's been here? He's homegrown, and you know what kind of player you're getting. And not to speak badly on Brandon Manu Maluyuna, but the guy he couldn't stay in shape. So, and you ended up paying him all that money, and then you ended up cutting him next year. Then you brought in the Chester Taylor, who, obviously didn't fit what they wanted. They didn't know him that well, so that's probably a mistake that they made. You had to get rid of him also. But you have somebody here that's been with you the whole time, and you know exactly who he is and what he's about. Why not pay that guy?
What do you think about Lance Briggs here saying he wants his contract extended? He's got 3 years left. I mean, don't you live with the contract? Or the $19 million sitting there that they haven't spent, and he figures I want a piece of that pie.
And when the answer to that is, do the organization live with the contracts when it's the player that's not performing well?
Oh, I mean, that's the beauty of the NFL. You sign these big contracts, it sounds like a lot of money, except, okay, you only get that 1 year, and then if they want to, see ya, bye, and they're not on the hook for that money.
Not for a single penny.
Right.
It goes against the cap and things like that, but the player,
it's not going in your
right.
pocket.
So, do I fault Lance for trying to get more money because he's performed at a high level? No. Now, will I expect him to get it? No, because that's just not the way it works. They have all the leverage, and he really can't do anything about it because he has 3 more years to play. Do I understand why the fans may look at Lance's situation and be like, what is this guy doing? Yeah. But as an athlete on Lance's side, I see what he's trying to do. You have to get what you can get right now, because if his performance goes down, he gets cut. Now that's a strike against him. Chicago Bears didn't want him, so why would we pay him as much as they were paying him? And he still may be a pretty good, decent player, but it just didn't fit the Chicago Bears scheme anymore. So you have to try to maximize your profitability as much as you can while you can.
What about with Jay Cutler here? A lot of people are saying that this Martz system does not fit him as a quarterback, that he needs to roll out like he did in Denver. I mean, you played under Shanahan. That's when he was at his best.
Yeah, and he is a guy that's a very athletic quarterback, which I believe that he doesn't get enough credit for being an athletic quarterback. A couple of years ago, he was one of the highest rated quarterbacks as far as rushing yards in the league. So, yeah, why not use that? Why not use every effective weapon that he has to the advantage of the offense? Why we haven't used him as much like that, I don't know. You have to get into the brain of Mike Martz, and that's a hard thing to do. And I don't know if you want to go there.
Scary place to be sometimes.
I don't know if you want to go there. So, be careful what you wish for. But you think that for each and every player, you use all the best qualities that they have as a football player, and that's one that has been underutilized for Jay Cutler.
Okay. The Devin Hester experiment as a receiver, as somebody who's on the field at the same time as him, how did you view that, and how do you still view that?
Well, I wish people quit calling it like an experiment or they're trying to make him a receiver. He is a wide receiver.
He's just not a number 1 wide receiver.
Okay, and that's fair. That's fair to say. But to keep calling him an experiment and to keep saying that they're trying to do this, no, he's a legitimate wide receiver. Look at his numbers compared to other wide receiver numbers in the years that he's been a receiver, and they're comparable to a lot of guys who you look at as legitimate receivers. I think what happens is everybody sees him as the Windy City Flyer returning kicks and expect for him to do the same thing as a receiver. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. He is not as good of a receiver as he is a kickoff or a punt returner. He's a good quality receiver that I think the Bears might have put the cart before the horse by calling him a number 1 receiver.
If the Bears had a legitimate number 1 and or number 2 receiver, and all of a sudden Devin's your second or third option, you think he becomes a much more effective receiver?
Right. I believe he's effective now. But with a guy that could come in and be, a 80, 90 catch receiver, I think he would be able to complement any guy well. Now, saying that, I think he fits into the what I like to call receiver by committee. Because all of these guys, even last year, the year before that, these guys were all comparable with their numbers. It wasn't a guy that stood out above everybody else and took over that number 1 role, and it worked for us. It worked for us last year, and it could work for these guys this year. How many number 1 receivers are there really out there today? It's not very many. It's more teams that's doing it by committee than doing it by having that one great receiver and the guy who's complimenting him. A lot of times you see that one great receiver, and then there's no one else.
Who's the best receiver in the Bears right now?
If you ask me, it would either have to be Devin Hester or Johnny Knox, one of the two. I think for me it was hard to see Johnny Knox have to take a backseat when Roy came in, because I think Johnny Knox had a great season last year for where he was in his career, and to get demoted without even having a chance to challenge for his position, I think that that could have been a mistake by the Bears. But it seems like he's bouncing back pretty good, because you can destroy somebody's confidence easy like that,
yeah.
and it's a credit to him that he didn't let it destroy his confidence, and he's still out there playing well right now. But I think it has to be out of one of those two guys who's the best receiver on the Bears right now. And the only reason I say one of those two guys, because who I thought was the best receiver last year was Earl Bennett, but he hasn't been on the field this year.
He should be back on the field, I think, for the Eagles game.
He got hit hard. That hit this year.
He did. And when he went down, I was like, ooh, man.
Yeah. You could see careers ending with stuff like that.
I've been hit like that before, not seeing the guy coming.
Who was the hardest hit you ever took?
I think it was a couple of years ago. Adrian Wilson, I caught like a 5-yard out, and I turned up the field, and he caught me like head on head, and jammed my neck up, and I missed a few games after that. So it wasn't one of those hits that on TV look hard, because I got up and I kept playing and everything. But when he hit me, I felt it, and it had some residual effects over the next year.
Yeah. Now, if Roy Williams can turn out to be the Roy Williams of a few seasons ago, then all of a sudden the Bears receiving corps looks a lot better.
Right. It will. But what I say to that is, you get what you get from any guy presently.
Right.
And, as a sports world, we always look for, an athlete at his greatest and want him to continue to be that. And I don't think he's there anymore. I don't think that the Chicago Bears are really, not right now, is expecting him to be there anymore. So if we get a Roy Williams that's, 3/4 of what he was when he was in Detroit and catch 60 passes instead of 80 passes, I mean, you have a pretty good Roy Williams here, because he's a big target. He's a pretty good receiver. So if he could put up, 75% of the numbers that he put up when he was in Detroit, I think everybody would be happy.
Yeah. I don't understand the Bears drafting, because you look at wide receivers around the league and lots of good, tall wide receivers, and it's like the Bears had a height maximum as to who they would go at wide receiver.
They were casting the Smurfs.
Yeah. I mean, they just got a bunch of really short guys.
Well, and they didn't draft too many receivers high in the draft. Right. You look at Earl Bennett, who's 6 feet tall. You look at Devin Hester, who they didn't draft as a receiver. And then you have Johnny Knox, who's 5'11", may can stretch to 6 feet. I don't know what they have him listed at.
On his tiptoes.
But David Terrell was a guy, who they drafted high. He was pretty big receiver. But
you guys had Brandon Lloyd and cut him.
Well, look at what he did for us that year. I mean, he wasn't very good for us. He had 2 or 3 good games in the first 5 games that he played, but then he missed like 7 games. Right. And then when he came back, he really didn't do anything. So, you can't fault the organization for that. He was on a 1-year contract, a 2-year contract, but then when a guy doesn't perform, how do you know what's going to come once he get to the next team? I mean, the year before in Washington, they let him go because he didn't perform. So, and it was good. You could see a guy like Brandon Lloyd, his talent on the field. You could see it. It was visible.
He was a head case, though, I heard.
No, I don't think he was a head case. I think he was a very eccentric guy. He was a little different, but he didn't cause any trouble. He didn't make any waves in the locker room.
Not like Chris Harris with tweeting, and if you don't perform and tweet, you're out of the Bears. It seems like.
Well, yeah, but that's anybody. You have to perform, and you can't fault the Bears for that, because it's a performance-based industry. You perform, or you go find another place to try to perform.
Yeah. Now, you had trouble getting on the field because of injury. What's the pressure like to get back on the field knowing that you're not 90% or 80% and being able to do what you think you can do?
I had trouble getting on the field because of injury. I never had trouble getting on the field because of injury, because my motto was that I was never injured. No, I'm serious. As I matured in this league, I learned how to play with pain. I learned how to play, with some injuries also. The first game of the year in 2009, I think I broke my back and I broke a couple bones in my back and I broke a rib and had a bruised kidney. And I was back on the field in 3 weeks. And I was upset with the doctors because they didn't let me come back earlier. And, I just felt like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have some pain, but you deal with it. And the reason why you do that is because you have a guy like a young Greg Olsen that's playing pretty good. And you know that each week that you're not on the field, somebody else is out there making their career. That's how I got on the field, because somebody slipped up because they couldn't keep their weight down. So you don't want to ever give up your position because you were not on the field. If somebody beats you out, fine. You tip your hat to them and say good job, and you keep helping them do whatever they got to do to make the team better and hopefully help make you better through the competition. But to not be on the field and lose a job, that's a hard thing to take.
Thank you very much for your time, Des. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully we'll see your show up soon. The Desmond Clark Show, is that what you're going to call it?
Des Clark Show, yes, sir. I was told to brand my own name instead of sportsmanlike conduct, so I'm going to Des Clark Show, and I think in a couple months or before, I think I'll be somewhere in somebody's studio doing exactly what you guys are doing.
Could be this one.
Yes, sir.
Looking. They made you a star.
Hey, only because I'm alongside you.
No, I'm just an attorney trying to make money. Thanks again. I want to thank Des Clark for coming in studio, Catherine Rook, The Lovable, and thanks for listening to Sports and Torts. I want to thank our sound man, Dave Olson. I'm David Spade with Elliott Harris, and tune in again next week. Thanks.